Yo, good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah. Last day before the big fight day tomorrow, man. I wanted to give you my final predictions for all of the fights. Obviously, we haven't seen the weigh-in yet for the Terrence Crawford, Israel Madrimov fight card. All right. I'm sure most of you guys see my breakdown videos. I covered pretty much all of the main fights that's on the card. But I want to just give you my final thoughts on it. We did see the final press conference. We see the open wayouts. Uh, not the open what's it called? Not wayouts. I said wayouts. um, the open workouts. That's what I meant to say. We seen the open workouts, and at this point, I don't think there's anything left for any of the fighters like to say. I think the weigh-in, everybody looks like they're in great shape. Andy Ruiz looks like he's in good shape, at least for him. We already know he's a big body dude, but at least he doesn't look like the way he looked like in the Joshua rematch when he was just completely overweight. And we know Gerald Miller is clearly in shape. I've been saying for years now, this guy needs to be under 300. He needs to be around 290, 285. I think someone asked me in the comments how much do I expect him to weigh, and I said around 285, 290. I think that should be good. And from what I'm seeing, it looks like that's where he's gonna be. All right. I think the only thing that I was like looking forward to in a press conference was the exchange between the big babies. I knew it was going to be some sort of exchange because, to be honest, everybody else that's fighting each other has respect for each other. You know what I mean? So I wasn't really expecting there to be any animosity with anybody. We already know Big Baby is cool with, or Gerald Miller is cool with Andy Ruiz. So, they already had, their face offs, and they had their face to face, and they had their conversations and interviews. I already knew there was going to be no animosity between them. But I knew when the real, Big Baby and the regular, the old Big Baby came and was going to be sitting around each other. I knew there was going to be some like friction. But you can't really beat Gerald Miller in a shit talking match. I mean, that's where he's the best, but you can beat him in the ring. So yeah, today I'm gonna give you my final predictions, and I'm gonna give you all the bets that I placed because I already placed everything, and I think I'm good. I think this is the most I probably put down. No, not the most I put down, but I mean the most bets I place. I don't put down a lot of money on these. I just do these for fun. But I think this is the most amount of bets that I made on one card. I usually like play around with it, but like recently I've been more strategic on how I gamble on those little apps just to see how long I could keep building my little account that's on there, from scratch. All right. So it's all funny games with me. I don't bet like real money. I know big people that bet thousands and thousands. I don't do that. I just bet like little bets here and there, and just to see if I could pop, especially hitting on these underdogs. And that's another thing too. And I keep saying this, but with these cards that we're getting, and shout out to everyone that's here, man. Let me just give a shout out to everyone that's in the chat. Chance, what's up? CMP was good with you, man. E-Class, Pepino. Shout out to everyone that's here. Please drop a comment if you can, and also smash the like button if you haven't already. But yeah, the more cards like this that we get, the more upsets we're gonna get. This is the reason why this year specifically, the reason why we're getting a lot of upsets this year is because of the quality of the fights, and they're gonna keep happening. This shit is gonna turn like the UFC. It's gonna turn like MMA, where guys is gonna have multiple losses, and they're gonna still be a top contender. There's about to be a whole bunch of Derek Chisoros out there, especially in like the heavyweight division and all that. I think we're going to get at least one or two upsets on this card. There's a strong possibility that we might at least get 2 upsets on tomorrow's fight alone. And I think it's going to keep happening throughout the year because now Turkey Al Sheikh got all the promoters working together. You know what I mean? So I think it's great, especially for someone like I know a lot of us been boxing fans for a very long time, and that's cool. But as far as me being a content creator and had to hear the same argument points over and over and over for years, well, who would he fight? That's the one thing. Who would he fight? He didn't fight no one. This is the guy, like even um uh Dave Morell, for example. Dave Morell put out there was an interview where he was pretty much talking about Canelo and how he wanted that fight and why he moved up to 175 and how the fight with Canelo and Berlanga is bullshit. And I see people attacking him in the comments like, who did you fight? Who did you fight? And I'm like, dude, he's a young fighter on the come up. He's looking to get an opportunity from someone. He wanted Canelo. He wanted Benavidez. He wanted Plant. He wanted Berlanga. He's called these guys off. He's faced off with them. You know, he it's just all about getting the opportunity. If he's going to get the opportunity, that'll be great. But a lot of these fighters, it really depends on how early in your career are you going to get your moment. Obviously, for Bud Crawford, even as accomplished as he is, look how long it took for him to get that big fight where people finally respect him. At 36 years old, 35, 36 years old, he finally got the recognition that he probably would have got a long time ago. And I brought this up in the Floyd Mayweather video I did the other day with Crawford. If he had fought an Adrian Broner at 135 and won, all of that hype that Broner had at 135 might have not been here. Because remember, they were, for a short period of time, they were both champions at the same time. You know what I mean? So I think what we got to remember, and I think what's great what Turkey is doing right now and getting all the promoters to get together, we can't use that excuse no more. If we want to fight as a boxing fan, we should just be able to say it. We shouldn't have to keep saying, well, promotional issues, they're going to fight. We don't have to say that no more. We don't have to keep saying, well, who did he fight? Well, now you're going to have to fight because as soon as you get the phone call, and any of these guys can get the phone call, as soon as you get the phone call, it might not be the opponent that you really want to face. You can't, it's harder to cherry pick now because the money, the funds is up. The money is going to be there. So what's your excuse now? And I think that's why I love about what Turkey Al Sheikh is doing right now and getting these promoters together. I think at this point, we only got to get the PBC on board. And they really don't even have to get them on board like that because there's not that many fighters over there right now. But if we can get them on board, you know what I mean, and get them in rotation, then everything will be great. And of course, the promoters are still going to have their own cards throughout the year. Top Rank, Golden Boy, Matchroom, Queensberry. They're still going to have, Boxer, Ben Shalom with Boxer. All the promoters are still going to have their own cards throughout the year. But these cards here are like the Super Bowl right now. These are like the big, big cards. We can get one of these every month or every other month. Every month or every other month or every few months. If we get a Riyadh season type of card where it's just a monster card like this, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm happy. I just think the only problem that we have right now, and it's a noticeable change, especially within, I want to say since 2023, way too many pay-per-views. Way too many pay-per-views. Like we gotta normalize good fights without having to pay every single one. Like we're already paying. If you're not a streamer, we're already paying a lot. If you're doing it right and you're actually paying for, Peacock to watch boxer fights, or you know, dazn, or ESPN Plus to watch Top Rank. If you're already paying extra to see these, and then now we're paying pay-per-view almost every weekend now, it's like it's a little too much. It's getting a little too expensive. Now I appreciate the quality of the fights that we're getting, but there's still a lot of fights that don't need to be pay-per-view, that don't need to. And of course, we don't have to watch it. We can always stream it. And they're aware that most viewers are streaming the fights. I think it's hurting my pockets because I don't stream the fights, especially the ones that I do cover live. I do stream them, I do pay. Just morally, I just think that's the right thing to do. And I have to cover the fight. So there's fights, as a fan, as a boxing fan, I probably wouldn't support at all. But since I'm a content creator, I got to cover everything. You know what I mean? Shout out to everyone that's coming in the chat here. Mike, what's up, Mike? What's up, DJ Rush, CMP, 2-4, Sal's, Chance. Yeah. I answer a couple of quick questions. Mike says Canelo will be fighting Canelo will fight Boxingwave next after Berlanga. He might as well. I'm not going to disrespect Berlanga like that, because he is a real fighter. But what I'm saying is the gap in experience and talent overall is just too wide. This is too wide for Canelo at this point. Canelo's already like a great. I just think this is too low of a step for him at this point. He's accomplished too much, and it's been a streak of mediocre fights. But I think this is even lower than those mediocre fights we've been getting. But I know he's older, and I know he's on his way out. And like I said in my video about this fight, I know he's a phone call away from getting a big fight that's dangerous. You know what I mean? I know he's not going to challenge. He's not going to give him the toughest fight right now, when he might be getting a phone call to fight Crawford or the winner of Beterbiev and Bivol. Because let's just say Crawford loses tomorrow. That fight is off. So if that fight is off, what are the other options for Canelo? Probably the winner of Bivol and Beterbiev, maybe. Maybe, Benavidez still, you never know. But yeah. Zach says he's going to England at some point. He might, he might. DJ Rush asks, Boxingwave, how are you doing today? Other than Tank and Canelo and David Benavidez, what young fighters does PBC really have? Yeah, and it's not too many. I mean, there's a lot of solid fighters, but there's no fighters that they're building. In fact, I think it's the other way around. I think a lot of the fighters there has been on the shelf for a long time, like Stanionis, for example. I did see Stanionis' recent fight, but he looked like he was rusty, and that's the problem, like, where's Chris Colbert? Yeah, I know he got knocked out, but what's going on with him? You know what I mean? So I think outside of the fighters that left, you got to keep these guys active. And I think that's one thing that PBC didn't do a great job doing, and keeping the fighters active. Sal says, hey, Wave, I'm crazy to say I don't see anything special about Madrimov. Mean Machine looked to have more facets to him, in my opinion. It's easy to throw home run hooks against much lesser opponents. It's funny you mentioned that, because that was an angle that was going to go on a breakdown that I did. There's a few things that I decided to not speak on, and there was a few things that I forgot to address in the breakdown that I did. Again, I did about 5 breakdowns that day. And even though I'm getting the breakdowns are well received, like they always are, but there's, sometimes, since I'm doing it off top of my head, there are certain key points and stuff that I forgot to bring up with Crawford and Madrimov, and I'll bring them up. But with that being said, I was going to bring up Mean Machine, because I believe now, where I disagree with you is I actually think Madrimov is dangerous. But I think Mean Machine was smarter. It's not just the ability of Mean Machine and his punching power. I think he's smart. I think he was smarter and more patient than Crawford. You know, he did a great job countering punches. It's like little sneaky fights that Crawford have on his resumes that people don't pay attention to, like the Jose Benavidez fight. If you can force Crawford, if you're patient enough to force Crawford to lead, and not saying that Crawford can't lead because he can, but if you force Crawford to open up a little bit more and maybe overcommit a little bit, there are counterpunching opportunities that's going to be made. And that's what I think Kalajdzic did well. I think Eggy did a good job in those first 3 or 4 rounds. It's just that it got to a point where Crawford started to really, really push the action and force him to fight his fight. And that's when Eggy started to fall apart. It's just how long you're going to be able to maintain what you're doing. You know what I mean? So the only reason why I was going to compare the two is because I think Eggy was the last real dangerous fight for Crawford. I'm not talking about like as far as popularity and stuff like that. Like, nah, we already know Spence was the bigger name, you know, Porter was a bigger name, but I'm talking about like I know I felt a little worried for that fight when it was coming up, you know, and I know Eggy wasn't really like a big name like that, but I felt nervous. And I was nervous about the Spence fight, but yo, we covered and talked about that fight for 5 years. By the time the fight was made, I made my bet immediately. Like I was so confident in throwing a bag on Crawford. Whereas Eggy was like, I don't know about this guy. There's something about this guy and the way he fights. And plus, he has the power, the one punch kind of power that made me a little fearful of him. You know what I mean? So I get what you're saying, but I disagree. I think Madrimov is dangerous, but in a different way. I think him being a little bit more aggressive and being a puncher and being like a naturally bigger guy and being in his physical prime. Um, a lot of people made these arguments and points about Crawford and his opponents over the years. Was saying that he fought him at the right time and stuff. You can't say that for this fight. You can't say that here. You know what I mean? What's up, everyone in the chat, by the way? Solid Maneuver was good. Zach was good. Jay Roos was good, bro. Maker. Hey, Yvonne, how you doing? Juan Mendoza. Who else is here? Bill Murphy. Ronnie Boy, what's good with you, man? I ain't see you in a minute. Yeah, so yeah, we'll talk more about that when we get to Crawford, all right? But overall, love the quality of fights. We're gonna get more upsets. Again, I'm expecting an upset or two on this card alone. All right, so look, let's get into it, man. Let's get into these fights. And again, please drop your comments. I want to read what you guys think of these fights. We're gonna start out with Andy Cruz against Antonio Moran. Now, this is the only fight I didn't do a breakdown for because I think it's a little bit too obvious on how this fight is going to go. All right. Another step up fight for Andy Cruz. I believe he's already in the rankings for the sanctioning body. So we already know, like, look, my view on Andy Cruz is I think he's already in range. I don't think he needs to go a whole long amount of fights to fight the best. You know, when you're one of the greatest like amateur fighters already, and you know, you kind of getting that Lomachenko treatment to me, Guillermo Rigo. You don't need to fight even 10 fights to get a top contender. I think he can fight and possibly beat majority of the top contenders at 135 right now. And him being with Bozy Ennis and Boots in that camp over there and them working on him putting that power down and turning those punches a little better. I think he's going to be a very dangerous fighter. Like if he gets to a point where he starts punching, he's dangerous for everybody at 135 without a doubt. Forget what happened, the 5 fights he won against Keyshawn. If he can start punching, it's over. It's over. He's dangerous for anybody at 135 right now. But the moment he starts punching, it's going to be a problem. Now, I was going to place a little bet on him by KO. That's the only thing. This the only fight I think I sat out on because I'm just not sure. Because even though Moran got knocked out by Devin Haney, that's the only fighter. That is the only fighter that and let me just pull this up. Moran is the only fighter. I mean, Devin Haney is the only fighter to stop him in his 6 losses. He got 6 losses and a draw. Devin Haney is not a knockout artist by any means. We know that. But Devin Haney, if you guys remember this fight, and I believe this is Haney's last knockout, that was the hardest punch I've ever seen Devin Haney throw at anybody. I think we can at least agree there. If you've seen Devin Haney, if you've been watching his fights, even if you're not a fan, if you've seen this fight, you would know that right hand that Devin Haney threw was literally a baseball pitch. He hit him so hard that I think he almost fell over by punching him. He don't throw punches like that no more. At least not at the higher level. He doesn't do it no more. So Moran, who's lost to Jermaine Ortiz, who's not a big puncher, he's lost to Arnold Barboza, who's not a big puncher at all. Obviously he lost to Jose Pedraza, who's not a big puncher. So he's been losing the fighters that are not really punchers like that, but only got knocked out by Devin Haney. I think Cruz is on a mission to get a stoppage, right? He's definitely on a mission, and he's on a mission to get a stoppage. But I'm not confident enough to put money on the KO. So I was like, I was thinking about putting a little bit down because I know that's what he's going for. And he could probably do it in 10 rounds. But I think if it was like a negative 115 if you get if you pick him by knockout. I think that's what I checked on DraftKings this morning. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna leave it alone. I already got a lot of bets in for this card. I'm gonna fall back on that one. I'm gonna chill on that one. But we already know Andy Cruz is gonna win. Andy Cruz is gonna win every round. All right, he's gonna continue winning every round against everybody he faces. It's more about whether or not he's gonna get the knockout. At this level, it's about whether or not he can get the knockout in the fight. All right, but this is a 10-round fight. I mean, it's a step-up fight again. And he's going to keep looking good and shining against everybody he faces up until at least up until he starts fighting the top contenders in this division. You know what I mean? All right, so that's how I look at it. Ronnie Boy says, I was at the Haney Moran fight at G Harbor Slim. Okay, got you. Zach says big facts. Lonnie says salute Wave. What's good with you, Lonnie? Raul was good. Says salute Wave. Hope all's good with you. Like always, appreciate your work. Salute Boxingwave community. Thank you. King G says Bud knows that he's hitting the canvas this fight. All right. Well, I don't think he knows that, but I think he's going to try to prevent that. I don't think he's taking Madrimov lightly. He said, Zach says, you can't even bet on Big Baby and Bakole yet. Bet in MGM feels the upset is coming. Oh, I bet on both of them. I bet. No, I didn't. I'll get to that when I get to the fight. I'll tell you what bets I made, but I made bets on them already. I made my bets on not DraftKings, but FanDuel early in the week. All right. Matt Eddie asks, does Madrimov beat the Spence Crawford fought? Does Madrimov beat the Spence Crawford fought? That is a good question. That is a good question. Good question. Well, Possibly. I think it's unfair. Let's run that back after this fight. You know what I mean? I can't give you an answer because I want to see how Madrimov looks against Bud. You know what I mean? I haven't seen Spence. The last time I seen Errol Spence in a ring, he was getting his ass kicked brutally. So I think it's unfair to make a decision based on Madrimov coming off his best performance versus Spence coming off his worst. That's just a little unfair. You feel me? So I'll give you an answer after this fight. All right. But like I said in the breakdown, I think stylistically, Madrimov might be a bigger problem for Crawford than Spence was. But that's because I had so much knowledge on Spence going into that fight. I've seen him in big fights so many times. I already knew what he was going to bring. I already know what he does, and I knew exactly how Crawford would capitalize off of it because Spence is very textbook. I don't think Madrimov is as textbook. I think Madrimov is more explosive than Spence. I think Spence is a better worker, like a better pressure fighter with volume and stuff like that. But we'll get more into that later. All right. All right. All right. So let's get into the next fight. Let's pull this up real quick. What else? What else we got? All right. So Dave Morell and against Hot Rod Kalajdzic. So this is the fight that I basically told you guys, like, look, I got Dave Morell winning the fight, but I think it's criminal that I was able to to pick up Kalajdzic for a plus 1420. Like Dave Morell, I got him winning. So let me just make that clear. But Hot Rod, in my eyes, only lost to one fighter, and that's to one of the best fighters in the world, and Arthur Beterbiev. So even though I think Dave Morell is winning this fight, this is still his first fight at 175. He's fighting a puncher. You know, he's fighting who I believe is the best opponent he's fought up to this point. And it's not like he doesn't have holes in his game. I understand the hype behind him. I like the fact that he's chasing everybody. I'm good with all of that. But he's not perfect. I do think he has some defensive flaws. And I just think that in this fight, even though he should be the favorite to win, I don't think he's that much of a favorite to win. You know, Hot Rod again only lost to my eyes. In my eyes, he only lost to one fighter. You know, I think he beat Marcus Brown back in the day. You know, I think they gave Marcus a gift that night. But I think, you know, if we're gonna get an upset, I think that's a no-brainer. That's just to put anything you got. You know, if you want to put $10, put anything you got on Hot Rod, just cause it's too much of a gap. You know, and in my opinion, I think it's too much. All right. So I didn't put anything on Dave Morell because I don't know if it's going to be a stoppage win. Again, he's moving up. He might be stronger at 175 because he's kind of big. He was kind of big at 168, but is the power going to carry over? I think it will, but we won't know until we see this fight. Again, Morell is good. Do I think he's better than Beterbiev right now? Nah. Or when Kalajdzic fought Beterbiev? Nah. I don't think he's that far off, but I need to see more. You know, I mean, solid fighter, and he's fought some solid. He's definitely good, and he's fought some solid fighters. But I think this opponent is a little bit more dangerous than if there's a chance of an upset. You know, I don't think it's a bad idea to put a little bit down on Hot Rod. You know, um, Solid says Beterbiev KO Hot Rod in 5. So I think Morell stops him before 12. And that's fine. I'm listen, I'm not gonna argue. We all on the same page. If this fight was, I think everybody agrees that Morell is the favorite to win, and Morell is likely to win either by stoppage or by points. But 1420 plus 1420, it's a little something that I think is worth putting a little money down. That's the way I look at it. All right. But I do think Dave Morell is going to win. But if I happen to get lucky, and I've seen crazier stoppages, I still think what I will say is that we're still learning about Dave Morell. We're still learning, so I'm not completely sold on him yet. There's still more I want to see, especially if he's going into a new division. At 168, he didn't fight Canelo. He didn't fight Munguia. He didn't fight Benavidez. He didn't fight Christian Mbali. He didn't fight any of those guys. Not saying he wouldn't beat those guys, but what I'm saying is we still got a lot to learn. You know what I mean? There's a lot of fighters that was down there, and I understand that they weren't looking to fight him. I don't think they were looking to fight him. But that's how I look at that fight. Igor, thank you for the donation. He says, my guy Wade be cooking crazy for us lately after that July vacation. I got Bud by TKO 11th round. Okay. Yeah, I that's what I'm thinking too. But we'll talk more about it. I'll let you guys know what I put down. But for this fight, the only bet that I made for this fight is I put a little bit down on Hot Rod straight up. I didn't put anything on David. He's too much of a favorite to put anything down on him. I put a little bit, tiny bit on Hot Rod. See if I get lucky. All right. And make 14 times as much as I put in. But I don't think I'm gonna get lucky. All right. I think there's gonna be an upset at some point in this fight card, but I don't think this is gonna be it. All right, but you never know. All right. Okay, what's the next fight that I should address? Let's talk Pitbull and Ryo. Now, this one is one that I got a mixed bag on. I did a breakdown on the day, and people think I'm clearly underestimating Ryo Valenzuela. I was like, listen, I'm not underestimating him because I understand the power that he has. I might be underestimating his boxing ability, and I'm basing that off what I've seen in previous fights. I just don't think his defense is good, and I don't think he's going to turn into a mover overnight. Again, I was bringing up details based on what I've seen in his fights against Chris Colbert and De Los Santos, and even other fights, all the other knockouts that I've seen him have. I know they have a common opponent in Francisco. Okay. I understand that. I'm not underestimating his boxing, but I think his defense is suspect. I think he's very easy to hit. I think he's very, very easy to hit. I think he's just I think he stands a little too upright. All right. I think that when he's exchanging on the inside, I think he's just a little too upright. And I think Isaac Cruz, being that he fights the way he fights, I just think that's a recipe for disaster. Now, being that Cruz is the favorite to win this fight here, I put money down on KO. All right. I got Cruz a KO, but I got a hedge with Valenzuela by KO because I don't see KO. I don't see, like, I've seen a couple people say that they got Ryo by decision. And you know what? We might get a decision. Cruz doesn't knock out everybody he faces. So I get that. But I think Cruz can knock out guys that don't have great defense. And I don't think Ryo is just going to out of nowhere become a slippery fighter and become a mover overnight. I've never seen him fight that way before. I mean, look, if we see it tomorrow, it'll be the first time I've seen it. Because Pitbull in the opening bell, he's already on your ass, like right, he's right on your chest. So I'm not saying Ryu could prepare for that kind of fight. He could become a power shouter. But what I'm trying to tell you guys is I've never seen it. From what I've seen, Ryo is a slugger, in my opinion. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in this particular fight, it's going to be harder for you to hit him than for him to hit you. Because your height and your overall size, but your height specifically is what this guy is used to fighting. So this is why I think Cruz wins. I place bets on both because there's a lot of money on betting on Ryo to win by KO. But you know what I mean? I just think Cruz stylistically, this is I think his chances of winning is better. All right. This might be one of the upsets, but if it's an upset by KO, because Ryo is dangerous. One thing I will say is that Ryo has tremendous power. He's a puncher. I've seen him drop guys quickly, make short work of guys. He hits hard as hell. But outside of that huge strength, I don't see much there. I don't really see much depth in his game like that. You know what I mean? So this is why I think Cruz is going to win, because I think Ryo is going to just be too much of an easy target. And I don't think it's going to be like one punch or anything like that. But I do think that Cruz, will get to him and continuously hit him. I think Ryo wins by knockout if he is to land that uppercut perfectly. I see, that's that's the punch everyone goes for. But like I said with Tank landed it, but Tank was always on the move in that fight. He didn't get much leverage in his punches in that fight. Tank focus was on movement and avoiding the counter that was coming. And it's always going to be a counter. There's always going to be a counter, So I don't think Cruz is the best, but I think his style is difficult for everybody, Tank quit says Ryan isn't good enough to go the distance. He's going to get worked and eventually become a non-moving target. Yeah, and he's always been a non-moving target. So, excuse me, unless he puts in, unless he changes overnight into a different fighter, I'm making breakdowns based on what I've seen. You know what I mean, and not what I believe he needs to do. I'm gonna always go back to another fight and say, yo, this the way, like the way he fought in this fight here, he needs to do that. I haven't seen him have that kind of success that way. I've seen him being aggressive and trying to rush the knockout, you know? So that's the way I look at it. No, Tank did have a broken hand. He did break his hand. He did injure in his hand in the fight. But I'm just saying too, Tank was moving more than we've ever seen him move before. We can agree with that. You know what I mean? I'm not, the power. I don't think Cruz has shown, like, again, we're basing it off what we've seen in fights. Cruz has a chin. Pitbull has a chin. All right. You have to have a chin in order to fight that way. You have to. That peekaboo style and coming straight forward, you have to have a chin. You have to have a chin. Zach, I don't necessarily agree with this, because I get what you're saying about Nick Ball and his style and the similarities there. But Vargas moved a lot in that fight. Vargas moved, held. Ryu is not. I don't think Ryu is capable of fighting that type of fight. I think he is a knockout guy, and he's going to try to get the knockout, and he's going to try the time and knock this guy out, which is what he should do. See, that's another thing too. I don't want Raya to go off and try to fight like someone he's not. And this is why I was trying to say in a breakdown. I don't want him to go and try to do stuff that we haven't seen him do. All right. You're not a great defensive fighter. You're not. All right. I think there's things that he can work on, especially when it comes to leaning back. I think he needs to work on stepping around, you know, a Pitbull for this fight. So I don't know what they worked on. But let's be real. At the end of the day, he's more of a slugger than a boxer to me. You know, um, he can box, but defensively, he's not that good. So trying to move and trying to fight like someone that you're not and we've never seen you do, it's only going to last for a certain amount of time. We've seen fighters try to improve, like in rematches. We see fighters trying to improve or whatever they messed up in the last previous fight. But you can't go too far past of who you are as a fighter. You still got to fight your fight in order to win. You still got to fight your fight. And the matchup might fit him well. Again, the power is what is going to be his size and his power. So if he is able to land the perfect uppercut and time Isaac Cruz as he's coming in, right, and catch him with a good hook or something, if he's able to do that, he might win that way. But I don't think he's going to win by trying to be moving and pot shotting and trying to be slipping all these shots. I don't think that's going to work that way. I think at some point and very early in the fight, it's going to become a slugfest. And whoever catches the cleaner shot is going to go down. So this is why I hedged this fight the way I did. I think, I'll lose everything if it goes to distance. But even if Cruz loses the fight, I'm still going to make more money off Ryan winning. You know what I mean? To cover that loss. You know what I mean? But I believe Cruz is going to win the fight. Holden Gore, thank you. Appreciate you supporting, man. You've been here for a minute. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's the way. Yeah, Ryo does have a new trainer. Again, he might do things differently. But what I'm not going to give you is a breakdown or a prediction based on stuff that I've never seen him do. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you things based on what I seen him do, and he lost to De Los Santos, right? For example, he lost to De Los Santos. Did he go in the Chris Colbert fight looking like an improved fighter? No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Now, he went into the Chris Colbert rematch as an improved fighter. Well, he performed better. But from what I saw in that rematch, he was just way more aggressive out the gate. Like out the gate, he came straight at Chris Colbert. I mean, he's a bigger guy. He's more powerful. Why are you going to box with him? The focus was on to get him out of there. And that's exactly what he did. All right. Real Prison Talk says, I got Ryan winning a decision. Boxing aggressively without being too reckless because Cruz chin is for real. Yeah, I mean, I'm staying away from the decision thing. I just think both hit too hard and both are too hittable for me to pick a decision win for either. But that's the way I'm calling it. But good luck to everybody. At the end of the day, I just want to see a good fight. I mean, these bets are just for play for me. I just do it for fun, and I just like growing my little, my betting app accounts and stuff, just with the little bit of earnings I make on these fights. But again, I just do it for play. But I think Cruz is going to win, right? And by KO. All right. So let's go to the next fight, man. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next. All right, so let's do this. So let's do the heavyweights. Let's do Gerald Miller. No, I'm sorry. Let's do Jared Anderson first. Jared Anderson against Martin Bakole. Now, in my opinion, I think this was the hardest fight to predict on this card. I think this is the hardest one. I think this is the most 50-50 out of all of them. I think you could go either way with this, but it seems like from what I'm seeing, what I'm reading online, it seems like most people are picking Martin Bakole to win. Now, I want to just bring up a few points here. All right. And I'm leaning towards a Martin Bakole, but this is what I did. I also hedged this, but I hedged it totally different from the last fight. I think if Martin Bakole wins, I put money on him to win by knockout. I think if Jared Anderson wins, I think he wins by decision. Okay. The reason why I picked that is because I think both have defensive flaws. I don't think they're bad at defense, but I just think they have, you know, obvious defensive flaw. I don't think either one of them was that hard to hit. With that being said, I just think that Bakole, being a bigger man, the more experienced guy, I think he's more. I think he's been tested a little bit better up to this point than Jared. Jared, like I was saying about um Dave Morell earlier, I'm still learning about him. I'm still trying to figure out where he's at. And what I do know is that one thing I don't trust about Jared Anderson, I'm not questioning his heart, all right? But I am questioning his drive to want to box. And this is based on what he said himself. Okay. So I'm questioning his drive a little bit. Seems like he wants to get out the game very, very quickly. It doesn't seem like he's happy doing this. And I'm questioning his mental. So he's a very emotional dude. He seems to, you know, that part I just don't trust. Ability wise, I think Jared is probably the better talent. I think he can just do more overall in the ring, like I said in the breakdown. Overall, I think he has much more to offer. But Bakole being seasoned, experienced, and being bigger, more durable, I think this is why most people are picking him to win. And this is why I think if he is to win, it's by knockout, because in those exchanges, and yeah, remember, Jared, when he gets caught with a good shot, like he just turns into the Hulk and starts slugging it out. And you've seen it in a lot of fights. Every time he gets hit clean with something, he wants to respond right away. And it can work against a guy like Jerry Forrest. I was there for that fight. I believe that fight was on a Teal Field, Fimo Lopez, Sandor Martin undercard. Anderson gets caught with a good shot, and then he wants to brawl after that. And it worked against Jerry Forrest because Jerry is not a huge puncher. But what I did notice in that fight is that when Jerry caught him with a good shot, Jerry basically caught him with every punch he threw. Because once Jared gets aggressive, he gets a little too reckless. And then he starts overcommitting, and then he starts leaving himself open to get hit. Now Bakole on the other hand gets hit a lot too. And mind you, I want to make something clear about Bakole. As dangerous as he is, right? And I do believe he's more seasoned and stuff. I'm still waiting to see what he can do at the highest level. Now, I've told you, Bakole, in my opinion, should be in the mix with all these other guys that's been on these cards recently. Like with the Zhile Zhangs and, All of those dudes, right? All these guys that's been fighting. I want to see him against Young. I want to see him with Dillian White. I want to see him against Joseph Parker. I think he's at least proven a Hergovich, you know what I mean? Or a Joe Joyce. I would have liked to see those fights, but I haven't seen them. And even if it's true that there's somewhat, let's just say what he just said, like about these sparring. So let's just say it's all facts, right? Let's say he knocked out all these guys, right? Gerald Miller. Let's say he beat up Dubois and Anthony Joshua. Let's say he had smoke for all of them, right? And he had bested them all. I haven't seen none of that shit yet. So for Big Baby and for Bakole, we're gonna learn what you really about. And listen, don't get it twisted. There's a lot of pressure on Bakole too, because you just recently came off saying that you beat everybody in sparring. You beat Usyk in sparring. You beat Fury in sparring. You gotta show up now, because being that you're the more experienced fighter, being that you basically beat everybody on a planet in sparring, now you got to show up and show us that you really about what you were saying in them gym stories against Jared Anderson. Because if you lose this fight here and you feel that everybody is ducking you, and you lose this fight here against a guy that I believe is too soon to take a fight like this, not too soon as in timing. I'm talking about too soon as the gap in you know in levels in opposition. I mean, Charles Martin is a former champion, but the momentum is in Bakole's favor right now. You know what I mean? He has a lot to prove to the world. Because when you look at it, and I have to make my arguments for Jared Anderson. If Jared Anderson fought Carlos Takam, I would expect Jared Anderson to stop him. Maybe he doesn't, but maybe he does. But all I know is that I expect Jared Anderson to beat Carlos Takam. I would expect Jared Anderson to beat Shevardusky. I would expect Jared Anderson to beat Tony Yoka. I would expect him to beat Sergey Kuzma. Kevin Johnson in 2019, hell yeah, Jared Anderson would beat him. All right. Marius Wack, absolutely. But these are the names that's on Martin Bakole's resume. The only person that I wouldn't be sure if Jared Anderson could beat, at least at the time that Bakole faced him, is Michael Hunter. So, and that's the only one he lost to. And he had a shoulder injury in that, like in the fight, not like after the fight. He in the fight. All right. So with that being said, it's a very dangerous fight. It's a 50-50 fight. I think if someone get knocked out, I think it's more likely for Jared Anderson to get stopped here. We seen him hurt against Charles Martin. I think Bakole, as far as punching power, is at least as big as a puncher as Charles Martin. At the very least, don't underestimate Martin's power. He can punch. But Bakole, very, very fast hands for his size. Very fast hands, good counter puncher. And he's a big guy, man. He's been coming in at 3, right? He's been coming in at 3. He came against Carlos Takam at 300 pounds. Shevardusky is 280. Based on how he looked at the face-offs, I don't think he's gonna beat 3. I'm expecting a weigh-in later, which is gonna be later. I'm expecting a weigh-in. I'm expecting him to be 280. I don't think he's gonna come in at 3. I think he wants to be in a little bit shape. I think 280 is good. But Tony Yoka, Jared Anderson would have beat him too. So this is why I'm saying, like, even though Bakole is more experienced, you got to remember this is probably also his best challenge. Or at least, well, if he were to win, it would be his best win. I don't know if it's his best challenge, because you can make the argument that Michael Hunter was the best challenge. He fought Michael Hunter when Michael Hunter was clearly a threat and a boogeyman on the low. You know what I mean? So we just gotta wait and see. But I think this is the hardest fight to call. I do think it's 50-50. But I think Jared Anderson round by round, like if we go to a decision, we go on points, I think Jared Anderson's gonna win. I think he's gonna have, if we go on points, I think he's gonna have the better amount of work done overall. I think he's gonna be more consistent. I think his volume and his condition is just gonna be, even though Bakole's got great conditioning too, I think Jared Anderson is gonna be a little better, out through a stretch. All right. Um, I think both Bakole's best chances of winning is by stoppage, you know, prior to 8 rounds. I think if these guys are still in a fight going into the ninth, I think the advantage slowly goes more and more into Jared Anderson's favor, you know. But as I said in the breakdown, I'm rooting for Jared Anderson. You guys already know Jared Anderson. I love him. I just don't. I guess because he's not really trying to stay in the game like that. I guess this is why, they're putting him like against Warren Bakole right now. I think they're like this point, you know what? We might as well throw him in there. We might as well throw him in there with the Wolves, because if he's talking a good, if he's talking about leaving and retiring by 26, we might as well put him in there with the Wolves right now. And I think that's exactly what's happening. All right. So I'm hoping he wins. I don't know, man. I think logically, I just gotta go with Bakole, and Bakole is actually the underdog. I was actually surprised to even see that. So I put, like I said, I put Bakole by knockout. And I got Jared Anderson by decision. All right, on the bets. So that's the way I hedged it. All right, all right. Shout out to everyone that's here. Please, if you haven't already, smash that thumbs up, man. Hit that thumbs up for me, man. Show support. Share the video if you can. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. All right. Yeah. Pepino's right. He said Pepino says this fight will test Anderson's heart. Yeah. Well, it might not be hard. It might, bro, that guy hits hard. Bakole hits him hard enough, man. you know, you just never know, especially in those exchanges, man. I think it's harder to put Jared a little bit to win, only because I feel like he has to be more cautious. He has to be a whole lot less reckless. And again, he fought cautiously against Ryan Murray, but Murray was just looking to counter. Whereas Bakole is going to be looking to counter, but he's going to be looking to lead too. So I think the fight is going to start slow. Like, I think the first round, I think we're going to see both of them have respect for one another. But as soon as somebody gets clipped with a good shot and the crowd reacts, that's when shit gonna change. MAW, thank you. He says, hello, boxing fans, wave in chat. ATM, at the moment, I'm leaning towards Morell, Andy Cruz, Bakole, Ruiz, and Bud. And full props to opposition if I'm wrong. Thank you. I appreciate you hitting me with the donation. I appreciate that. All right. So let's get it in. Let's get to the next fight, man. The other heavyweight fight, the other big baby. Let me pull this up real quick. All right, what do we got? Where is it at? Where is it at? Where is that? Big baby. Andy Ruiz. All right, Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz. Now, it looks like both of them looks to be in good shape. Right? Andy Ruiz ain't blown up, overweight. It looks like, I mean, we got to see the weigh-in, but it looks like he looks good. Gerald Miller. Gerald Miller looks like he's finally back in the shape that he's supposed to be. And I think it was smart to lose weight, but not lose too much weight. Like, again, let's be real. Gerald Miller's size is always going to be an advantage. It's something he needs. So when it comes to him getting in shape, at the end of the day, you don't want to lose too much weight because you want to be durable. You want to be strong. You know, you want to have that size advantage. You're already tall, but you're a heavy dude, so you want that. You need that. You know, you're not. He doesn't have. Let's be real. He doesn't have the. He's not the more talented fighter than Andy. You know, Andy had a lot more potential. You know, from the beginning. You know, if you've been watching Andy from day one, Andy had the funny shaped body back when he was fighting on Top Rank in the beginning. Um, but he always had those fast hands, those lightning fast hands, those combinations always been on point. You know, Gerald Miller really won off his work, you know, outworking his opponents and letting them burn themselves out before he mauls them. That's this style. But you know, the PED thing happened, and it was always a question on whether or not was he really on PEDs before that fight with AJ, or the fight that was supposed to happen with AJ. Was he using it prior? You know what I mean? How can he be that big and that heavy and have that kind of volume? You know what I mean? How do you have that kind of engine? So I always question whether or not, and we didn't see that engine in the Triple D fight, the Daniel Dubois fight, his last fight where he lost. But he was also in terrible shape. They said they got the call 4 weeks in advance, so he didn't have time to prepare and get rid of the weight. So look, this was one of the earliest bets I made. All right, Jared Miller's an underdog. I think I put money on him to win straight up. I think plus 270. Nothing against Andy. I think Andy's the better talent, and Andy should probably win the fight. But if Gerald Miller is going to win against Andy Ruiz ever, it's going to be tomorrow. Because Andy Ruiz in the last 4 years, he's fought 4 or 5 years, he's fought twice. He fought Luis Ortiz, who's already on his way out, and Chris Arreola, who I don't even know if he's. Yeah, he had one fight last year. All right. But you know, Chris is an old school guy. He's been around since the last generation. He's from back in the old Klitschko days. You know, so Andy getting dropped and getting hurt multiple times in the Chris Arreola fight, not a good look. All right. He was coming off a 2 years layoff against Arreola. And then when he fought Ortiz, that was 2 years ago. That was September of 2022. So if Gerald Miller is going to pull off an upset, it'll be tomorrow. Because at least Gerald Miller, who hasn't been completely committed to the sport, has been a lot more active recently. You know, he took on a few fights, a very overweight. You know, he's at 340 in his first fight back after that 4-year break. Right? Had 2 quick fights, and then he fought Lucas Brown. All right. Stopped him. And then he went on to lose to Daniel Dubois, weighing 333. I think Gerald Miller's probably going to be about 290. You know, again, I think the reason why Miller has a chance of winning is not only because of his activity and Andy being rusty, but Andy is a mid-range fighter. I think we all know that. Andy's a beast mid-range. Gerald Miller, he can mix it up a little bit. You know, he's more mid-range, close range. But when they're close range, Andy is not going to be good. Andy needs some space. He's not a guy that works on the inside. And what the amount of time that Gerald Miller is going to be doing work on the inside, on top of laying and leaning against him, that's going to take a lot of momentum from Andy Ruiz. And this is why I'm leaning towards Gerald Miller, or at least putting him, you know, at least I put my money down on him to win. I didn't bet on Andy for this fight. But I also did place another bet. And the bet is the draw. The draw. I think Andy still has a lot of fight in him. So if there's any chance, because I'm not expecting a knockout here. I'm not expecting one. So if Andy is having his way mid-range and he's picking up and he's getting good, you know, shots and he's buzzing Gerald Miller, but then there's rounds where Miller is winning because he's leaning on Andy, he's doing more work on the inside. There's a chance that this fight might end up being very, very close. I have to draw just in case. All right, but I put money on Miller to pull off the upset. Okay. I think he's very capable of doing it tomorrow. Prime Andy Ruiz, I would probably never pick him to lose to Gerald Miller. But tomorrow, I like Gerald Miller's confidence. I like the fact that he got back in shape. It still might be too little too late because he's older now. What is he, 36 years old? He's 36 years old. And, you know, I mean, he didn't look good at all against Daniel Dubois. So I'm expecting a better version of him in this fight here. But to guarantee the win, I don't know. You know, if you still got Andy to win, that's cool. Again, overall, he's the better talent, but I think timing is an extremely important factor going into this fight. You know, timing is important, and I think the timing favors Miller just because he's been way more active recently, and he's actually in shape to fight. You know, for real. You know, um, no, I'm not picking him for the New York native pick. I'm not picking him for that. I'm not biased when it comes to placing bets. I'm biased when it comes to telling you who I want to win. Like I want Jared Anderson to beat Martin Bakole tomorrow. But when it comes to placing bets and give you breakdowns and predictions, I tell you who I want to win, but I also tell you who I think is going to win. Like I want Jared Anderson to win, but I think Martin Bakole is going to win. Just my opinion. You know, and then with this, I'm just leaning on Gerald Miller because he's on shape. He's in shape. If he wasn't in shape and this was the same guy that fought Daniel Dubois, I'd probably be picking Andy, especially if he had been active, you know. But it's still a good fight. Um, Again, Andy's a better talent, but I just gotta wait and see how he's gonna look, man. Yeah. So anyway, that's the way I look at it. All right. Last fight, Terrence Crawford, Madrimov. You know, we talked a little earlier about it and the styles and everything. Um, I picked Terrence Crawford. One bet I placed is from Terrence Crawford to win by knockout from rounds 9 to 12. That's the only bet that I placed for a Crawford in this fight. You know, so that's where I'm going with it. I think Madrimov might hurt him. We might see Crawford down for the first time. I think Madrimov and his explosiveness is going to be an issue, or could be an issue. Not going to be, but could be an issue for Bud. You know, because again, the key factors that we got to put here, and this is not taking anything away from Madrimov and what he's capable of doing, because I'm not sleeping on him at all. But what I will say is this: Bud will be 37 next month. Okay. He is coming off his best performance, but this is against a different type of fighter. Fighters that is a very explosive fighter. You know, he's He's good. He's not popular, but he's good. And I think right now he's one of the, if not the best fighter or one of the best fighters at 154. Okay. Um, he was a very good amateur. I've seen him fight southpaws. I've seen him fight orthodox fighters. I think he has the good power. He's speed. He's in his physical prime. 29 years old. Big overhand right. That's the first thing I saw, especially in the Kurbanov fight. Good hook, um, good fundamentals, decent defender. All right. But I think that's where it stops. I think the defense, and I was bringing that up in a breakdown. I think it's going to be a right hook from Crawford. I think Crawford is going to be facing him southpaw. I think a right hook is going to catch Madrimov as he's lunging in, and he's going to get hurt by it. And Crawford is going to finish him off at some point. He's going to get clipped with a right hook. He's going to overextend and get countered with a right hook. Because that's what Crawford does. Crawford is going to step back and counter him with a right hook. And it's probably going to be while Madrimov is lunging a little too far with the right hand. I think also one thing I didn't bring up is that Crawford is probably the best right now at countering his opponent's jab. He's good at taking their jab away. If you notice, if you watch his fights, especially like not with just Spence, but with other fighters as well. When guys try to stab him to the body, he counters all the time, almost all of the time, with his own jab. And that's pretty much how Spence got clipped, but he's been doing that with everybody for a minute. So once he takes away, and this is why I said in the breakdown, the jab alone is going to be a problem for Madrimov because he has a 6-inch reach advantage. And I have not heard anyone talk about that. I watch other people's stuff. No one's bringing up that. I just find it strange that people are talking about this fight and they're like, are you guys realizing that Crawford don't just have a good jab, but he has a very long reach advantage over Madrimov. Madrimov has to lunge in. He's gonna have to overextend at times to connect. And that's exactly what everybody does wrong against Bud. So even though he's naturally bigger, yes, he's explosive, he has power, he has speed. Crawford's getting older, so I get that. And Crawford still gets hit. I know he still gets hit again. It's not like, upsets do occur. But it's the jab alone and the reach that is a major, it's gonna be a major problem in this fight. So even though he's moving up, look at the dimensions and look at the styles. Crawford is a master counterpuncher. He is. It's a good counterpuncher, but that jab, Madrimov has to do so much more to get close. And then Crawford is one of the better movers out there. Madrimov seemed to do his best work when he can get in range and start using his angles. But when you're not in range and you're not with a guy that is squaring up with you, you're not even able to do that amazing footwork where you're pivoting and stepping around your opponent and creating angles like you were able to do with Kurbanov or a Boxingwave, or any of the other opponents that you face, because Crawford is he's going to be moving. You know what I mean? He's not going to just be robotic and just let you move like Lomachenko around. He's not going to be doing that. This is not Lomachenko against Nicholas Walters. You guys remember that fight? That's where Loma was really able to shine and show his angles in that fight because Walter's just feet were cemented to the ground. Crawford's not that way. So I think Crawford is going to be cautious. I think he's aware of the dangers of his opponent here. Um, the reason why I keep picking him leading up to this fights, not saying he won't lose. So one thing I will say, I think it's going to be hard for Crawford to beat everybody at 154. Let's just say, like, hypothetically, Crawford doesn't fight Canelo next and he just campaigns out 54. And he runs through whoever is current champs, right? Let's just say he fights whoever are the other current champs in the division. It's going to be very difficult to become undisputed there without losing at least once. So it could be this fight. But I do think Crawford winning all 4 titles at 54 is going to be much harder than it was in the previous divisions at 140 and 147. You know, I think the more he goes up, it's going to be more difficult, and the more that he's aging, is going to become more difficult. You know, so I have Crawford, but I'm picking the later rounds. Obviously, if Crawford does it earlier than that, then I lose. But you know, again, I you know, we're here. We bet. Well, at least I bet for fun. All right, just to see if I get lucky. You know, that's it. Nothing more. But I have it 9 to 12. I thought about doing a 10 to 12, but you know, obviously I'll hit bigger on the rounds 10 to 12. But I picked 9 to 12. I think 9 to 12 is fair. I think Madrimov. I think Madrimov and Crawford are gonna have a lot of respect for each other in the ring. I think Madrimov might start off faster. I think Crawford is gonna need some time to, you know, get everything in order and learn his opponent. I think Madrimov has a chance of hurting or buzzing Crawford early in the fight within the next first few rounds. But I think all of those are possibilities. But I also think that Crawford is going to figure him out and break him down. And at some point, he's going to be daring Madrimov, the bigger fighter, like he's done with many other fighters that were bigger than him. He's going to be daring Madrimov to throw so he can set him up for the counter. You know? DJ says, I don't have Crawford being Carlos Castano at 54. Where is Brian Castano? Did he ever come back to, like, where is he? What happened to this guy? Did he ever get back in a ring? Nah, he stopped. He hasn't been in a ring since the Jamel Charlo loss. That's sad, man. That's really sad because I mean, you were clearly the other best fighter at 154. You were clearly the other best fighter. You know, Rocky said he got frozen out. I hope not, man. I don't know if this is a PBC thing. I mean, it's been over 2 years, bro. I mean, come on, even with the loss. I mean, you were clearly the other best fighter at 54, right? It sucks that if he really just like lost his fighting spirit and doesn't want to fight no more. What a waste, because he was still very, very good. I also still believe that speaking of 54, I also believe that Tim Stu is still a a tough stylistic matchup for Crawford. I don't think that's an easy fight for Crawford. I actually think that's a more difficult fight for Crawford. I'm not saying that Tim Tszyu is better than Madrimov. What I'm saying is that for Crawford, I think Tim Tszyu is more dangerous for Crawford. I think Tim Tszyu is even heavier handed. Um, And those counters are no joke, you know? And I think Crawford is a master at breaking down a fighter that's fighting out of a high guard. But Tim Tszyu, those quick counters is a problem. It would be a problem for Crawford. Also think that Virgil Ortiz is very difficult. I think if Virgil looks good, and I'm getting ready to do that breakdown. I already started doing film study on Virgil and this guy Buhuchuk. That's not an easy fight for Crawford too. I think if Virgil keeps improving, it's going to be a time where it's going to be a difficult fight for Bud as well. You know, at 147, I had Bud winning pretty easily, and I think the team Virgil Ortiz knew that, and this is why they didn't go for the mandatory when he was with the WBO. But that's a difficult fight. That's a difficult fight. All right. Who else is at 54? Jamel Charles said Jamel is gonna stay in campaign at 154. Look forward to seeing him come back because I want to see how he looks against all these other new guys now. And then you also got this guy Bakram Murtazaliev that we can't forget about. We can't forget about him. He's still hanging around. He is also the IBF champion. He was Jamel Charlo's mandatory for a minute. All right, but we're still waiting to see what he can do too. But he's another guy like Buhachuk. Big power. Big power. You got a bunch of guys here at the division. You still got Erickson Lubin. And you have Xander Zayas on the come up. All right, but anyway, I got Bud rounds 9 to 12. That's the only bet I have on that fight. That's it. You know, I think, you know, I mean, if you're gonna go with Madrimov for the upset, go for it, man. Go for it. If you wanna get an upset, go for it. Somebody's gonna get upset. All right, before I get out of here, let me ask you guys. I want you guys to all comment. All right, and please hit the thumbs up if you haven't already. What is the most likely upset for this card? Just pick one fight. One fight. What is the most likely upset on the card in your opinion? Let me know in the comments. I'm gonna say Bakole. I think Bakole might be the most likely upset to go down. I'm gonna rank it. I want to say Bakole against Jared Anderson is the most likely. I think the second most likely for me is Miller against Cruz. And I think the third is probably Ryo against the other Cruz. I think those are my three that are most likely. And I think the fourth will probably be Madrimov beating Crawford. So I want to say in that order. So I think Jared Anderson losing to Bakole is probably the most likely upset. Then Miller against Andy. Pitbull. I'm sorry, Ryo against Cruz. And then Madrimov against Crawford. And then after that, I really don't see any. Even though I picked Hot Rod. Well, not picked him, but at least I put a little bit down on Hot Rod because he's too much of an underdog. I'm not expecting him to win. All right, but this is boxing. I've seen crazier things. All right. I've seen crazier things. So if Hot Rod is to beat Morell, at least I'll hit big on my little bets. I think that would cover all the other fights on the card. Even if I hit wrong on everything else, I think the Hot Rod beating Morell will cover me for everything else on the entire card. these are quality fights, man. I think 2 or 3 of these can easily be upsets on Saturday, including the main event. All right, but very good card. All right. All right, guys. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and predictions. I will be here Saturday. My father, I think my father will be here as well. So I will be here tomorrow. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be here, man. We gotta have fun, man, and it'll be a long card because we get to at least cover all the undercards too, because they're all good fights as well. I think at least 2 or 3 of these could have also been their own main event as well. All right. So please, I will be here Saturday. I don't know what time. Yeah, I got to see the times of when the first fights begin, but I will be here Saturday to chop it up with you guys. Tomorrow I'll be up here and we'll do what we normally do on Saturday nights, man. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk our shit. And, you know, I know a lot of people got different views, but we're going to talk our shit. We're going to have a good time tomorrow. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. All right. So please hit the thumbs up on your way out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.